My name is Taylor Fudge. I'm chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. As usual, we have a very full agenda, and it's my goal to get everyone out of here on time. As a reminder, we would ask that you please limit individual conversations during this meeting. This will ensure that the commission members and the applicants, or the citizens, the concerned citizens, can hear one another. Please remain quiet until you're called upon when you do speak at the podium up here. Please state your name and address for the record. Before the commission votes on each item, I will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. I'm really bad at that part, so it'll be a team effort up here as usual. Speakers are given 3 minutes, and again, 3 minutes to relay information to the commission. Please be thorough, but also be mindful of your time. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located on the PrimeGov website. If you're following along online, select Agenda on the right side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see which items are being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting are posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, new materials may not be shared with commission, so if you brought materials with you, please keep them at your seat as we cannot accept and review. I repeat, we cannot accept and review new information in today's meeting. Keith, can you please call roll?
Fudge.
Present.
Jordan. Gaines.
Present.
McBride.
Present.
Milner.
Present.
Orr.
Present.
Remy.
Present.
Whitley.
Present.
Sorry. David Remy.
Oh, where? Sorry.
Gary Wood.
Present.
Thanks, sir. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For anyone who is unfamiliar with the process, we would ask that you refer to that particular section. However, there are 2 items that we do like to note specifically regarding this meeting process. These items involve certificates of appropriateness and appeals. Regarding certificates of appropriateness, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design, review, inspection, or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Regarding appeals to the Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. And Keith, just for the record, Commissioner Remy is present. Do we need to do anything else with that, Rita? No. Okay. Katie, what do we have? What news is coming out of the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer?
I have nothing in particular to report at this time.
We'll move on to the acceptance of minutes. Have commissioners had a chance to review the minutes from the July 5th meeting? And if so, do we have any questions or perhaps a motion to accept or modify?
I move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Gaines, seconded by Commissioner Wood. Please vote in PrimeGov. Oh, we might need to do a verbal vote for Commissioner Wood, please. Or
Yes.
And Mr. Ramey.
okay, the minutes were passed. Katie, what do we have from code enforcement?
Nothing particular to note on the report. As always, if you see items on the code enforcement report that you have questions about, you can reach out to staff or reach out to the city's action center for more information.
Okay. Any continuance announcements or requests?
No continuance requests and no new requests have come in since the agenda was published.
Okay. Looks like we do have one dilapidated structure to be heard today.
Yes, so we have not had one of these in quite some time. This is C23-33197 at 1001 Northwest 21st Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. This is a property, an accessory structure, a garage, that is in the process of being declared dilapidated by the City Council. When those are located within a historic district, they are routed to the Commission for recommendation. Your recommendation is to pertain to the impact of the loss of the historic structure on the character of the property in the district, and not on whether or not you think it is structurally unsound, dilapidated, etc. That is kind of the purview of the code enforcement officers that are working the dilapidated case. So we have recommended a recommendation or comments to be forwarded that would support the declaration of the structure as a dilapidated structure, and that is in the staff report.
Excellent.
And I don't know that we have anyone from code enforcement that was going to, oh, okay.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Andrew Haruz, 1219 Clausen Drive.
Perfect. Tell us about the structure.
Looks
Looks pretty bad.
When I purchased the property, it had already sustained a fire. It has gotten to the point where it's now just become quite a nuisance for a lot of the neighbors. Seems to become a habitat for homeless, and although we've tried to secure it, it doesn't really do us any good. So
Sure.
the tenants of the property and then the neighbors surrounding have all been complaining to the point that it's just time to tear it down.
Sure. Okay. Do we have any questions from commissioners on this particular item? Any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project?
Such a cool building.
Okay, it looks like it's pretty dilapidated to me. I don't know that it would necessarily have an adverse effect to take it down and rebuild. I would be in support of a recommendation to declare it dilapidated. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way, and if you do, perhaps a motion.
I'll make the motion that I send a recommendation that it be declared dilapidated.
Is that right, Katie?
Gary, do you want to include the comments in the staff report?
Yes.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Wood. I think I heard a second somewhere over here. Thank you. Second by Commissioner Whitley. All in favor? Or if you're not in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay. That passed by a vote of 8-1. Or did somebody abstain? Or was that just, did I do that again? Okay. Passed unanimously. Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to the consent docket. I believe there's 2 items. Is there any citizens that wish to be heard on either one of those? And do we have any comments from commissioners? Or perhaps a motion to pull and discuss or approve?
I move to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Gaines. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wood. Please vote in PrimeGov. All right, that passed unanimously. Let's see, we will move on. If you're on the consent docket, your project is approved. You've got the option to stick around and hear the rest of the meeting, or you can head out at this point in time. We'll move on to the cases for individual consideration. We've got 7 on the list today, starting with HPCA 2300047 at 800 Northwest 16th Street.
This is in Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Magnus, Jollybird Home Design, for Susan Key for certificate of appropriateness to 5, construct pergola elective, and 6, construct playhouse shed required. The commission has seen the component of the application regarding the pergola previously. This is the first time the playhouse shed has been on the agenda. That is before you because it is a corner lot. It's visible from the street. When we reviewed this with the playhouse shown on the site plan, we did note that it's in the right-of-way. So we just included a recommendation of approval for that with condition that it, if necessary, be moved within the property line or that a revocable permit be sought as needed. But staff didn't feel it. Staff felt that it was within the realm of what we typically approve for smaller accessory structures. Not any sort of adverse effect upon the character of the property. You can see the roof above the fence. The pergola was previously proposed and is in front of the garage on the driveway facing the side street that you can see in the image there. The applicant has revised some of the details as far as the trellis on the side in response to some of the comments from the last meeting. I believe we did recommend an approval of that with some conditions associated with it as well. You did have comments from the Mesta Park Neighborhood Association that were not in support of these proposals, just so that you're aware of those. And those are, I believe, attached to this item in PrimeGov.
Perfect. And just an FYI for everybody here, Commissioner Wood will be abstaining from this particular case that we're going to hear today. Just want to make sure that that's noted. But Fallon, please state your name and address for the record.
Fallon Brooks Magnus, 733 Northwest 22nd, representing the applicant. Yeah, I looked through the staff report and saw that the only caveat that staff had put on it was that we are in the right-of-way, which I actually didn't realize, even though I drew the site plan. It just never registered with me. I spoke with city staff in planning this morning, and they recommended a revocable just to make sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, but they didn't have a problem with it one way or the other, so.
Perfect. I think some of the discussion last time we visited about this was that the pergola is a very impermanent piece and doesn't disrupt the actual garage structure itself, which I can definitely support. I like the changes that you all have made personally. I think I would lean towards an approval. However, I would love to hear from my fellow commissioners have any questions, concerns, comments on this one, and then we'll want to hear from any citizens as well too. So, thoughts, concerns, feedback for the applicant on this one? Do we agree with staff's recommendation for approval on this particular item?
Yeah, I think she showed a good faith effort to incorporate the comments we had last time. So I have no problem moving forward with that. And, you know, as long as you're open to following staff's recommendations about the playhouse, I'm happy to push this forward.
There is a condition regarding the pergola that the polycarbonate roof panels be excluded. That was staff's recommendation. I don't know if the applicants discussed that with the property owner, if you all would agree to that, or if the commission thinks that's a necessary part of the approval.
I do. I mean, I think the guidelines say no roof panels on it, so I would support an approval, you know, with those conditions, but not sure how that affects the project overall.
Yeah, so the roof panels kind of make or break the whole thing. The whole point of it is to provide an alternative cover for parking.
Sure.
But also have an outdoor space that's usable in the backyard, that kind of thing. So it serves a lot of purposes. You know, I understand the concern of the look of it from the street and everything, but they're not going to be super visible unless you're under the structure. And then what's not included in part of this application is that gate, because it's not something that commission apparently needs to review. It's a staff thing, but we want to fill in the slats of the gate there with like wood planks. And from everything we've read, it's a staff approval thing. So that is sort of the long-term goal as well, to provide further screening of it from the public right-of-way. You'll kind of see the top of it, and you'll see some greenery probably, but you're not going to see a lot else.
I personally would struggle to approve with the panels on the top because I think the guidelines specifically say no panels on the top.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's a negotiation point with you and your customer, but
Yeah.
perhaps.
She's here. You can do it.
Do you want the pergola or not want the pergola? And can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, Sammy Duncan, 800 Northwest 16th. I think it would be clear. Does that matter? So that you wouldn't be able to see it at all?
It doesn't particularly matter to me.
Okay. And is this separate from my kids' playhouse?
Yes. Well,
Yes, they're in as two separate items, so we can approve one and not the other, or
Okay.
have conditions for one
'Cause
and not the other.
I am worried about that. They will be distraught. I'm like sweating bullets over the playhouse. So I would say I had a pergola at my old house in Gatewood. It wasn't a historic thing, so we didn't have to get any permission. And I did have a clear, tiny little topper. It's just like so incredibly thin and invisible, so nobody would be able to see it at all. And it just lets us like sit out there nicely, like if it's raining a little bit, and it just cover us.
I wish we could approve it, but my concern is the precedent that it would set for future projects, that people would want to come back and say, well, hey, have you seen this one over here at 800 Northwest 16th Street? And it will absolutely create problems for us down the road.
Okay.
So would the commission be, could we maybe do like a sun sail or something, like a removable, something that can provide shade in the event that we need it, and then removed?
To me, that sounds like a reasonable alternative. I don't know what the guidelines would support in that particular
Yeah.
instance.
I think we've seen some things like that go in where it's not even really attached to, or where depending on the way in which it's attached, we can administratively approve it, or it may not even require review. What I would say is this item is out of continuances. So we could approve with the condition that the roof, whatever we're calling it, that the solid roof be eliminated, and then either work with you guys for an administrative approval of an alternative, or you could always come back with a revision to add that back in and kind of make the
I'd be
case.
fine with a removable topper of some sort.
I would say that's about passport. Yes, but-
Any other questions from commissioners on
let's
this
do that.
particular item? Okay. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard? Okay. Fallon, are you comfortable with the suggestions that we've made today?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I am.
Do we have a motion? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move approval of HPCA 23-00047 with conditions stated by staff.
Do we need the unique circumstance
Yeah.
too?
Yes, so the conditions in there are that the roof would be removed,
Right.
so,
The conditions are pretty much as we've stated them.
yeah.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Was the unique circumstance on that? Do you need that?
Yeah,
What it-
and with there's a unique circumstance recommended in the staff report, if you want to include that as well.
Yes.
Then I will second.
Let's see, moved by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Poor. Please vote in PrimeGov.
Does he need to? He's abstained, yep.
Okay, that motion passed, 7-1 with Commissioner Wood abstaining, and Commissioner Wood will be joining us again for the next item, which is HPCA 23-00083 at 324 Northwest 26th Street.
This is
Yeah.
in Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Gina Buendia, Verana LLC for certificate of appropriateness. I'm going to not read all the items because we've got a long list here, but this is some renovations to the site and landscaping and exterior of the property that were completed previously. And this is before you now as a retroactive review for the CA.
Perfect.
Staff has recommended approval for several of the items. We recommended approval for the concrete border and with the condition that the concrete at the front sidewalk be eliminated, at the front stairs, that be eliminated. Approval for the porch swing, sign, wall covering, hot tub in the backyard, fence at the driveway. Recommended continuance on the installation of the concrete parging at the brick stem wall and for the tile overlay at the front porch.
Perfect. Is the applicant present?
Good afternoon, Caitlin Turner, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. A little backstory on this property. There was a fire in 2019-2020 that caused pretty significant damage to the actual structure. The previous owner did come in with a CA to improve those. The applicant now purchased the property in 2021, continued to improve the property, unaware that a CA was needed based on some ill advice that was received. The applicant came to Board of Adjustment to seek renewal of a special exception for a home sharing license, which is whenever this was brought up that a CA was needed. And just for the record, they're no longer proceeding with an Airbnb on this property. They'll do something else with it or just have it as a standard longer-term rental. Staff does recommend approval of 6 of the 9 items. There have been no protest. I wanted to touch on 3 of the items that Ms. Friddle had mentioned, 1 with a condition and 2 asking that we continue it. So item number 3, installing the concrete to either side of front stairs. So you can see the landscaped concrete edging around the landscaping in the front of the house. That concrete edging kind of goes down to that walkway. It does stop at the sidewalk along 26th. Staff didn't have as much of an issue with that edging around the landscaping. They're asking that it now be removed. So first, that concrete border kind of just allows for uniformity. It kind of all ties into that landscaped edging. It allows for additional footings to keep that walkway supported and those stairs supported. just kind of stabilizing to prevent further wear. Obviously, things move around and shift in Oklahoma. There's been significant issues on this property, specifically on that porch as well, with cracking and that concrete kind of wearing away. So that concrete border, not a substantive change to the structure, but rather just increases the longevity of that walkway and those stairs, and prevents further movement. The next one, which is one that was requested that we continue, is the tile overlay on the porch. So after speaking with the contractor, the adhesive that was used for that tile is a latex modified inset. So that's not something that's going to crack or have issues over time. It's a pretty permanent fix. As I had mentioned before, that porch was not level. There were significant cracks in it, and rather than just pouring concrete on top of concrete, which typically does not stick, and those issues are going to continue, this was a more aesthetically pleasing, long-lasting alternative to just prevent having to come back and seek approval to keep repairing that in kind of a Band-Aid type of way, if you will. So just further levels and stabilizes that porch. They also had a history of some pooling water on the porch, like some standing water, which I think if they were to re-pour that concrete, that still may be problematic. So the tile kind of allows for some runoff, so you're not getting that standing water on that front porch. Again, the steps were broken and tilted, and this just kind of allows a good alternative to what would be required otherwise. And then lastly, number 7, install concrete/parging at brick stem wall foundation. So this is a latex modified stucco that was used. Another kind of preservation technique for what was already there. Again, this is an extremely long-lasting material that was used to protect that brick stem wall. There is significant chipping, some erosion, and of course, since the structure sits on that stem wall, there are difficulties with ripping all of that out to replace it. It would require tearing out siding, and it would just be an extremely difficult undertaking to actually replace that stem wall. So rather, they use this stucco parging, which again is extremely long-lasting, pretty permanent fix. And so yeah, with that being said though, I'd be happy to answer any questions on those 3 items or any of the other improvements that we're seeking approval today.
Perfect, thank you. So we are to review this as if the work had never been done
Correct.
before. And the challenges that I see, one, staff's recommended approval on everything but the tile and the parging. My concern now is that removal of the parging would further damage probably the brick underneath, siding, some of the other things that have already been done. So that one I'm not as kind of dead set on. The tile, however, is a blatantly obvious kind of departure from what the guidelines state. And tile is very easy to pull up. I recognize that it might be a challenge later on to have to go back in and have to repair some of this. Unless it's done the right way, then I wouldn't think you would have to go in and repair it. So for me personally, I can certainly support approvals on everything with the exception of the tile. And that's kind of where I've gotten to on this particular item. Certainly want to hear from any concerned citizens that may be out there, but that's kind of where I sit. I'm curious what other questions, concerns, or comments we might have for the applicant from other commissioners.
I have a question as to why was this particular tile chosen that's so far out of the box for an historic neighborhood? And why do you think this particular tile pattern is appropriate for this neighborhood?
The particular tile pattern, other than just the benefit of using tile in general, that would have been an aesthetic reason that the homeowner chose. I know that around Crown Heights, there are houses along Crown Heights Park that have similar tiling on the porches, and again, that tile is a material that is contemplated in the code and justified, understanding that circumstances are a little bit different there, but that was the reason for the selection of this particular look of this tile.
Well, I'll tell you that the tile will never pass with me because clearly so far out of the box that it's not acceptable in my view. I also, contrary to what staff has recommended, have a huge problem with the concrete border that was put around the beds and along the sidewalk. Once again, I don't think that's something that we would have approved had it come in before. So I am against staff recommendation on 1, 2, and 3 as well, because you look here and it stands out like a sore thumb. That fresh concrete next to the regular concrete, it looks like a very wide sidewalk, which is out of the norm for the neighborhood. And so I'm against that as well. So those are the issues I have. The stem wall, I understand on that. Those are things that need to be repaired correctly. Maybe the coloring could have been different. It looks like they painted it black so that it would tie in more and give a different effect to the house, where if it was the color of the house, it wouldn't be as noticeable. But the sidewalk, the concrete border, all of that stuff I don't think would have ever been approved before, and the tile definitely is just a no-go for me.
Could I ask a quick question on the tile? Is it the pattern of the tile or tile in general? If they were to have gone with something that was more neutral and did not stand out, would your concerns still be as present?
Only if you could show me that there was no other way to repair the porch without using tile.
Okay.
My opinion on the tile itself too is, we also oftentimes talk about the, disturbing the architectural fabric of the community, and I feel like that's just so out of place with this particular street, community, all of that too. It just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb as like, hey, we did something wrong here and got away with it. So I would really struggle to support that.
I know the houses you're talking about, I guess in Crown Heights, there are some that have tile porches and steps.
With the tiles, yeah.
And I think those are more Mediterranean-style houses.
They do have the patterns, and they are very noticeable from the street, so I wanted to point those out as well. But yes, they are.
Yeah, I
kind of
appreciate that. I
Mediterranean
just think
style.
that that style of house is a little bit more Mediterranean looking for those tiles.
Yeah, I tend to agree on the tile too. I mean, you mentioned that the concrete porch and stairs were crumbling and not level, but that's not really a concrete issue, that's a structural issue, and that's from the land settling underneath over the years. So just putting tile on top of that does not actually fix the root of the problem. So that just means that your tile is gonna crack and it's gonna separate in your grout lines. So I can't really support that as a reason for doing that either.
After discussing with the contractor, I believe it's the type of adhesive more so than just putting the tile on top that would prevent that cracking, but understood.
Any other comments, concerns? Any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? None. Okay. So we've given some differing opinions on a couple different things. Do we have an opinion strong enough to want to make a motion on this particular item?
I do want to make a
Yes, sir.
clarification. Staff's recommendation is to allow the concrete coping at the beds, but the condition is to remove it along the sidewalk. Just clarify what the staff
might have missed
recommendation was.
At the front steps.
Yeah.
At the front steps?
Yep.
Yes.
That's a condition.
Okay.
That would be more palatable for me because I do think along the side of the sidewalk, it just stands out really bad. It should have at least been tried to dye to the same color or something.
Sure. I don't think that a continuance is necessary on the tile piece. It just feels like it's so far out of the guidelines. I certainly wonder if a continuance on some of the other items, the concrete parging, that one, maybe not so much, but maybe the beds, but I don't know that there's another alternative since it's already been done too.
Right.
There's an alternative, it's just costly.
Sure. No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't know there's an alternative to fixing that as it is other than taking it out.
I believe the applicant's alternative would also be if approval of certain items were made today would be Board of Adjustment would be the next
Sure.
step. So,
Makes perfect sense.
right.
So do we have a motion?
I'll try and make a motion here. I would move to approve items 5, 6, 8, and 9. I would make a motion to deny items 1, 2,
I'm sorry, we'll have to do approve.
oh, do approve
Motion,
one at a
second
time?
vote,
You don't
yep.
want it all within
Yep,
one motion?
Yep, if you can do the approval
Okay.
first, separate from the, yep, thank you.
Okay.
With
With
the
the
findings
findings.
in the staff report.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I will second those approvals.
Moved by Commissioner Wood, second by Commissioner Poor. Please vote in PrimeGov. Is that 5, 8, and 9 as well?
5, 6, 8, 9.
5, 6, 8, 9. Okay, great. Okay, that passes unanimously, 5, 6, 8, 9. Let's move on to the other items. Do we have a motion on those?
My next motion would be to deny 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And in that case, because staff did not recommend denial of those, if you have any
Guidelines don't
findings
support-
particular to why you would deny it, that would be helpful to include for Board of Adjustment purposes.
Okay,
And would that be with or without prejudice?
my reasons for that would be, number one, I don't believe it's part of the historic nature of the neighborhood to have the additional concrete or the concrete around the beds. Second of all, I do believe that had this been followed in an appropriate order, that the original request to install the concrete around these areas would have been denied by the board.
Perhaps something along the lines of the guidelines don't support
Okay, and the guidelines don't support
this
the,
type of application.
I'm sorry, I'm new to the board, y'all, so, and the guidelines don't support the application for the concrete that was installed or the tile that was installed on the porch.
And number one's just for the flower beds in front of the house, right?
I think
Not-
so.
It looked to me from the pictures, it's a continuous area of concrete that goes from,
Well, that's why I was trying to,
So number 3
Make it a-
is the concrete on either side of the stairs. I'm not opposed to the concrete on the flower beds.
I'm
It's
not
just
either,
on
that's
the
why you might
stairs.
want to separate those, they're all,
okay,
Are we all in agreement that we're not opposed to the concrete at the beds, but just at the stairs?
So the concrete from the beds down the sidewalk to the stairs is continuous. So if it's not all approved, there would have to be a condition that some alteration be made to the existing condition to remove whatever portion of it you all think should be removed, whatever portion of it the applicant agrees to remove, which
well, because
the-
you have install concrete border at flower bed as number one, and then install concrete border at front sidewalk, number 2. So it does look continuous, but the way that this is listed, it's
Yes.
listed as 2 separate items.
Yep.
So if we approve number 1, then that would, to me, say along the front of the house, it can be approved. Where it turns and goes down the sidewalk cannot be approved. That's the way I would read that.
Yep.
But if that needs clarified, then we can clarify.
So yes, I split them out individually in anticipation of the commission perhaps being comfortable with some but not all of it. But I think depending on where you would want to see that break, there would have to be a condition on the approval that they make that change. So
So what is the install concrete to either side of front stairs?
so that is the concrete, and I don't know if you can see it better. The concrete comes down the front sidewalk and then it continues down
The 2 steps?
the front yard steps. Yeah, see all the way to the public sidewalk.
Okay,
So-
okay.
In staff's mind, the concrete at the front flower beds was the least concerning. It's the least visible from the street. The concrete down the sidewalk is not a typical historic condition, but staff thought that was possibly something the commission would consider supporting. the concrete that comes down the steps and essentially widens the historic front yard steps seemed the most egregiously inappropriate as far as the visibility of it, the change to the historic front stairs themselves. So that's why they're split up like that.
And kind of in my opinion too, I'm not even opposed to the stuff on the side. It's just the front is, I think, where it really becomes a problem, in my opinion, but.
And I can live with at the border, at the flower bed, but the way that it appears there with the rock and everything, it just looks like an extension. Sure. So I will remove item 1 from my motion regarding denial, but I would like to stick with items 2, 3, and 4 in my motion to deny for the reasons previously stated.
I would be curious how it would connect into and abut into the stairs. Right now, it's got like a tapered chamfered or whatever you call that, like corner there. How would that function into the sidewalk stairs? Where would that connection be if you were to remove it from the walk and the steps? So that would be something I would want to see.
Is it a continuance then?
Continue it, and I can withdraw.
I mean, with,
But,
knowing that we are
how do other
likely
people-
going to deny anything that comes back resembling something like this, it needs to be something that's a little tighter with the guidelines.
Yeah, Cassie, I think you can continue 1, deny, it sounds like with prejudice, 2, 3, and 4. But you continue 1 with the knowing, how's that gonna connect in? Because there's a gap.
The property owner is not, I don't believe, is present. So we would also need to confirm that they're even open to a continuance or to making any changes, so.
Right. Well, I will say, and I understand that maybe some would be helpful since it is already there. I think that in the event that it was just permitted on the landscaping, then assuming that they would remove the walkway and front stairs, it could kind of get tapered off again at that front to kind of loop back up towards the stairs. And then in the event that the walkway were potentially approved, then I think it would get tapered off right before that front stair drops. So it would be kind of, you would still see that tapered edge as you can see on that top step. And then it would be kind of go back inwards for that original sidewalk. So I think that the landscape edging would be, as was mentioned, not super visible. I think an argument could be made that if the concrete was removed from the side of the stairs, which is what you would actually really see from 26th Street, that wouldn't cause a substantial visibility issue either. However, I think that both of those items, if they were not approved today, there would be fixes that would allow and accommodate for the concrete where approved.
And we do have guidelines for administrative approval of landscape edging, raised landscape beds, et cetera. So if the commission is comfortable with the general concept of keeping the edging at the front flower beds, I think staff can work through what that revision would need to look like. with the
I'm
applicant.
comfortable with that.
I would like to see it just go straight and dead end and not have that little flare, if that makes sense.
So I guess I'll amend my motion again to continue item 1, deny.
So we'll do we'll complete the denial
Okay,
motion,
the
and then we can
denial
come
would
back to
be
item
of
1.
2, 3, and 4 is my motion.
Based off, the fact that the guidelines don't support that particular
Correct.
type of work. And
I'll second that.
And it sounds like that's with prejudice. Is
with
that-
prejudice. With prejudice is can't
Yep.
come back for a year
With
without.
prejudice.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've got a denial with prejudice based off the fact that the guidelines don't support the proposed work. That was put forth by Commissioner Wood and seconded by Commissioner Gaines or Commissioner Rooney. I'm not sure who said that. Or Commissioner Milner. It was seconded by Commissioner Milner. Please vote in prime gov.
No, I didn't.
Okay, that denial was passed unanimously. Now, we move on to the continuance of item, which one is that?
1 and
One.
there's one other for continue.
1 and 7.
Okay.
Do we have a motion for continuance? And
Do we need a continuance on one if we're going to let it be administratively approved?
So you all could either continue that if you want to see the change, or you could approve with the conditions that it be revised to, you know,
I would like to do that. Approve with conditions that where it's revised by
That would be
and
my
approved by staff.
preference.
Yeah.
It's your
And then
motion,
if
but
I
that's
may interject, with number 7, was there a reason why that was getting continued rather than being voted on today?
So that's the parging.
It
On the
sounded like
stem
everybody
wall.
was,
Yeah,
it was what it was.
I would
think
approve that.
We can make a motion to approve that one.
Yeah. That's one I would lean towards an approval on that.
so we could take a motion to approve items 1 and 7 with the condition that revisions to item 1, as discussed by the commission, be submitted to staff.
I love that motion. If somebody wants to make it.
I'll move that.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Poor. Please again vote in PrimeGov. Okay. That continuance, or I'm sorry, that approval on items 1 and 7 with conditions was approved as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, move on to item number 3, HPCA 2300086 at 1001 Northwest 21st Street.
This is Mesta Park Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Tom Taylor, Building Education, for Andrew Harris for certificate of appropriateness to 1 demolish garage elective. This is a little deja vu. This is the same garage as the dilapidated structure that we just voted on. The applicant, the property owner, applied for a CA to demolish it at the same time as the dilapidated case moved forward so that they could proceed with the demolition themselves and not wait out the council process, which can be lengthy. So we recommended approval in line with the same thought process as the dilapidated structure.
And the neighborhood agrees with you as well.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. Is the applicant present? Negative. Any citizens that wish to be heard on this
I
particular
believe
project?
he may have left after the,
I think so too. Any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Okay.
I move approval.
I would like to move for approval.
I move approval HPCA-23-00086.
Moved by Commissioner Milner. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by
to
Commissioner Whitley.
confirm that's with, sorry,
With the
with the
specific-
findings in
yeah.
the staff report.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Second by Commissioner Whitley. Please vote in PrimeGov. This might have been our fastest case ever. Congratulations, guys.
I'll just interject. You're going to see me or hear me asking about the findings a lot more. We had a really fast meeting last month, and we had a lot of cases where there were no references made to the findings, which makes the minutes really messy, especially if the action taken is different from what staff had recommended. So I'm going to just be reminding everyone to either reference the findings in the staff report or come up with your own findings if those are not applicable to your motion.
Perfect.
So.
Thank you. All right. We will move on to item number 4, HPCA 2300087 at 717 Northwest 16th Street.
This is in Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Brian Waltz, BMG Properties LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, remove second floor exterior door elective, 2, replace windows elective, 3, reconstruct walls of enclosed porch elective, 5, remove aluminum siding elective, and 6, install railings at porch elective. And staff did recommend approval of all items except for the, let me see, I've lost my spot. We had 2 items that were recommended for continuance. Those may also be items that could be approved with condition that some additional information be submitted to staff, but I believe the applicant also has a very large sample of one of the items that we were needing documentation on. So we recommended continuance of items 2 and 3, replace windows and reconstruct wall with new siding at back porch, needing a siding profile and documentation of that the window would meet applicable guidelines for clear glass.
Excellent. Please come up and tell us your name and address for the record.
Brian Walls, 717 Northwest 16th Street.
Cool. Talk to us about your project and your exhibit that you brought in.
The window there, that's my prop. That's going to be on the north side of the house. I believe there's a picture in my application. It faces, there'll be an 8-foot fence, and then on the other side of the 8-foot fence, there's like commercial and apartments over there. And it came into question, you know, what window I got exactly. You guys needed more information. That's the best I could do to show you what it's going to be. It'll be 2 of those side by side, and it fits in the existing enclosure on the height. On the width, it will actually shorten the ugly storm windows there by like 6 inches. And then on the back northeast side of the house, there'll be another window, I believe it's a tad bigger than that.
Okay. Let's see. Items 1, 5, 6.
You can see in the very back there, that's where the northeast window in question.
On the very back here. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and you can also see the aluminum siding there on the side.
Okay.
And that aluminum siding will be removed, and there's also pictures in there where the siding matches up exactly to the original. And that will be all in the porch in the back and on the side there.
Okay.
So it all matches. Because I believe that was one of the questions in here you guys had on siding. That siding profile is chosen to match the historic. I'm not too sure what exactly you meant there.
I would imagine that it matches what's currently on the house now, and is that something that could be administratively approved if we were?
So, yeah.
Right now, at the back there, that entire thing, that's aluminum.
Yep.
And I'm just wanting to redo the porch. Now, if you approve my window, I'll do the whole thing, but
Talk to us
right
about.
now, just the porch.
There's a note in staff's report about tinted windows. Is that?
That's what it is.
That doesn't look terribly tinted to me. Does that look tinted to you guys?
Do you know what the percentage of tint is on that?
It doesn't say the percentage, but on the transparency, is that what it's called? It's 0.74, and in the docs, it says 0.47, which is like 0.25. I don't know how they work those percentages.
Isn't that in the guidelines, the minimum?
Yes, there's a requirement that I do not have memorized on the visible light transmittance transparency for the glass.
So tinted windows are not supported by the guidelines, which would be a tough one for us to approve. Is there a window
Back, 8-foot fence, commercial apartments, and enclosed porch, not the house.
I understand. Tinted windows aren't supported in the guidelines, which is a struggle for us to approve, much like some of the other people that we've talked to today. Is there a window like that that's not tinted?
Yes, but I haven't bought that one, I'm sure.
Of course. Okay.
And these are already purchased.
Yeah. That
Because we
makes it
did,
challenging.
it looks like painted wood. I mean, it looks like the historic stuff.
I think we're going to struggle getting that one pushed through. But good news is there are some things that were recommended for approval. And I think the siding piece it can be probably administratively approved depending, if we come up with a reason for that. But, I'm sorry, Daryl.
In the staff report, it has the guidelines related to the window. If you guys were concerned about that. It's on page 5.
Let's look at that.
It says visible light transmittance is not less than 0.74 and the overall reflectance is not more than 17%.
So is that within spec or without, or is that out of spec based off those?
That is 0.47. Don't ask me
I'm not
exactly
sure I know what that
means.
means.
But I
Anybody else know what that
showed it
means?
to look. I mean, it's in the back of the house, 8-foot fence. It's not like it's, the main drag.
And we're like decimal points off, I guess.
Yeah.
Percentage.
I mean, to me, there's
Can do a vote.
To me, there's some leniency.
Game.
0.74.
not that democratic.
So his is 0.47. It's
No,
less
to me,
than
the fact that it's a porch on the back of the house, not visible from the public right of way. I mean, I think that's a special circumstance or unique circumstance. I think that allows for some leniency, in my opinion.
And there's not even a house behind that, right?
No.
It's
It's commercial and like apartments, it looks like.
So the commercial buildings could be the unique circumstance too, you know, having that behind you and not
Yeah,
having,
I don't-
wanting people to look in and all that too.
I think there's an alley and a commercial property, so I'm okay with it.
Okay. Let's see, is there any part of this that we're not okay with?
So number 3, the enclosed walls of the enclosed porch, is that the railing that you showed?
Yes.
Okay, and you just need more information on that, correct, Katie?
We just need a siding profile so that we can verify that it matches the,
Okay, you can do
Other
that.
siding.
We can make that a condition of the approval?
yep.
Okay.
Let's check in with citizens. Anybody that wishes to be heard on this particular project?
Okay, I'll make a motion for approval of HPCA 23-00087, items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, with the condition that staff receives the information they need on the railing, and that on the window, the special circumstances that it's not residential where visible.
Katie, anything else we need to add to that?
So the information is on the siding, not a railing, just to clarify. And then, and then just with the other findings in the staff report as well for the other approvals? Okay.
You want anything about not visible from the public right away?
Yeah, not visible from public right-of-way and no residential behind it.
Correct. Tinted windows.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Gaines. We have a second.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Whitley. Please vote in PrimeGov. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, on the siding, so you're good with my siding I chose? Is there a staffing question on it?
So
So I, get with staff after the meeting or tomorrow, and we'll verify that we have what we need, or if we need something else from you, we'll specify exactly what that is.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You said you were going to do the siding the same as the house, so she just needs to show that it's the same.
Okay, in my packet, there's an example of the siding sitting on the old and the new sitting on top of it, and it matches 100%.
just make sure you submit that to staff and get their okay, and I think we're good to go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we move on to HPCA 23-00089 at 723 Northwest 38th Street.
And I need to recuse myself from this as president of Crown Heights, but I am going to sit in.
Perfect. Commissioner McBride will be recusing herself.
This is Crown Heights, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Craig Wallace, SRB LLC, for a certificate of appropriateness to install new sidewalk along North Chartel Avenue, elective.
Is the applicant present? Please come to the podium.
So as he's walking up, this is a proposal by the city to install a sidewalk within the current roadbed of Chartel Avenue on the east side. We have recommended approval with conditions relating to complete and accurate documentation of the interaction of the sidewalk with existing driveways. That was the only kind of outstanding concern that staff wanted to make sure we had addressed how that was going to look and how that was going to impact those existing features. So you have numerous public comments that were submitted, and I think we do have quite a few people here who would like to speak on this item as well. So.
Perfect. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, please comment on staff's concerns about how the sidewalks will interact with the driveways going down Chartel, and we'll go from there.
Okay, and thank you for allowing us to come and speak. Appreciate the opportunity. One thing that, looking through the staff report, that I did want to add
Can we get
is
name and address for the record too, please?
I'm sorry, Craig Wallace with SRB LLC, and that's at 100 Northeast 5th in Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
And again, this project is a sidewalk project. In fact, the first sidewalk project as part of MAPS 4. I don't believe that was in the staff report, so we are working for MAPS in the construction of this along the alignments that were put forth in an RFP and then an interview process. So the sidewalks will be placed, and I apologize, I do have additional conceptual drawings that I believe that were presented. I don't know has the commission been able to see those? They were as part, I believe, of the agenda item.
Yes, so I think, so everything that we had that was in the packet, they have access to up here at the horseshoe on their screen. So we've got the application itself.
There's
There's a rendering, yeah, there's a section of the road.
Okay, so all of that is visible for
Yes.
the commissioners? All right, thank you. So the question that was asked by the chairman was to explain a little about the sidewalk and the placement of that in relationship to the existing road, as well as how it would affect the driveways. And so if you have a rendering there that you're looking at, what we were proposing to do is to utilize 5 foot of the existing roadway. So if you're looking north in this, it would be on the northbound lanes on the east side. What we're proposing to do is, instead of the bike lane being where it's currently striped, we will bring out there you go, that's perfect, thank you. So what will happen is that we will bring an elevated sidewalk and protected sidewalk with a curb into that existing striped bike lane. We will then move the bike lane to be adjacent to that on the existing surface of the roadway. And so as you can see the driveway in this rendering, that driveway will be constructed in that 5 foot area and then adjusted to whatever elevation is required, which we feel like would be minimal to the existing driveway to make that adjustment. And what this does is allow that pedestrian traffic to be off of the roadway, protected with a curb, and again, maintain the bike path through this corridor.
So from a safety perspective, it seems to make sense. I still am struggling to see, there's a lot of driveways up and down this street, and there's a lot of different configurations. And with the raised bed and then the driveway that's going to draw, it feels like that's going to be a trip hazard on the sidewalk.
Okay,
And like it seems like that's just really going to be a little bit awkward from the transition from the sidewalk over someone's driveway. And talk me through that. I guess I'm still just struggling with that.
Okay, addressing the statement of a lot of driveways, I believe there were 7 or 8 properties that were identified, and there was a list of those properties provided. And so between 38th Street and 42nd Street, there are just those 7 or 8 properties. If you can consider the ADA compliance requirement for pedestrian access, that is a slope towards the curb of about 1.5%. But if you consider that the driveways are currently matching the pavement elevation now, and we come out at a 2% slope, which is what the current roadway is, actually you're elevating that approximately 1.25 inches. And so you're tying at a higher elevation. And so it really would be a less severe slope than if we were to tie to the back of the existing curb.
And I know there was some concern about people's landscaping being destroyed and things of that nature, but extending out in the street, does that?
This actually is one of the reasons why we considered this option or looked at this option, is because it moves us away from the landscaping and understanding that the current landscaping is in public right-of-way. We still didn't want to make that adjustment or require those property owners to make any adjustments to that. And so allowing this elevated sidewalk to be into the roadway, it actually moves away from that landscaping, so very little landscaping will be affected by this particular design.
Okay. What other questions do the commissioners up here have?
What is the existing width of the road? Is it 12 feet matching the other side?
The existing width of the road,
Of like just the drive lane?
Yes, understand, because it is a boulevard, we have 20 foot face of curb to face of curb, both on the northbound side as well as the southbound side. What this will do will reduce it, as you see in the conceptual drawing, and we also provided a typical section for the new alignment. You will have 16 foot on pavement, okay? So in other words, that will, there you go. So you'll have the 11-foot driving lane, which is acceptable by the City of Oklahoma City Public Works, the 5-foot bike lane, and then the elevated curve, mountable curve, as we call it, with the sidewalk. So the total width is currently 20 feet, and it'll be modified to 16 feet with these improvements.
And
And
then,
I will mention that all of that has been vetted out at our approval of Public Works as well as the Fire Marshal. We have reached out, both of them, for their, I guess, review and approval, and we have gained approval from both Public Works as well as the Fire Marshal for that 16-foot width.
Katie, do you,
can I, you good?
I was mean, do you want me to go?
Oh, no,
Do you-
yeah, you go.
Do you know?
If you're on the same side, that would have been easier. I could have answered
We
it at
used
the
to sit
same
next
time.
to each other. We could just elbow each other, you know? Do you know what Bike Walk OKC has in its plans for this? I know there's a draft that's come out. I didn't have a chance before this meeting to look at the draft of what they recommend versus what is being recommended.
I do not know off the top of my
I
head
keep-
what Bike Walk. I know that this was an area identified by transportation planning, other city efforts to designate priority areas for sidewalks to be installed, but right off the
Yeah, I
top of
believe
my
I
head,
can't
don't know.
answer that. It is identified on Bike Walk as, I believe, a Tier 2 or Tier 3. It's not a Tier 1 protected bike lane. This bike lane actually does continue south, actually all the way down to downtown. This will make connection to the future, I'm sorry, somebody help me. The new trail along I-44, and so it will tie to a park, the Zach Taylor Park, and so, but it does meet the guidelines for the tiers for Bike Walk OKC.
So Bike Walk OKC recommends putting in sidewalk?
No, it does not address, Bike Walk OKC does not address the sidewalks. They have a passage area and locate those bike lanes, so.
I personally would like to see what that, do you know?
And I'll tell you, yeah, thanks.
AJ Kirkpatrick, 1005 Northwest 17th Street. I'm part of the ADG team that is supporting MAPS. It is identified as one of the primary corridors in Bike Walk OKC. And the entire package that they are working on in MAPS was recommended by planning staff as the priorities that we should be building to continue the implementation of Bike Walk OKC.
So AJ, it's saying put in a separate sidewalk instead of doing some sort of like joint multi-path.
Bike Walk doesn't get to that level of
Okay.
detail, unfortunately. We had to identify several different scenarios in which to accomplish it. They just drew a line on Chartel that they wanted to prioritize biking and walking on that corridor.
And then my next question is, what is the drive lane right now currently? I know there's the bike lane, there's the drive lane, and right now on Chartel, most people, especially up by the school, park and use the bike lane as parking to drop their kids off. So I'm curious if this will help eliminate that
Sure.
from happening, because there won't be enough room to have somebody
Block the
park
entire street.
in the bike lane and not block the traffic.
Well, and it's, need some coordination with that school, because it's not parking, it's pickup, it's the backup. Does that make sense?
It's always been a bike lane, and they've
No, I know,
been
but what I'm saying
communicative
is
not to park there,
it's
but-
stacking for
Yeah.
the pickup.
Yeah.
So if it goes into the street, that'll have to be coordinated with the school, or else it creates a traffic problem.
So I guess my question is, what is the drive lane right now?
20 feet.
The width is, and then
The
how?
I'm sorry, the driving lane is currently 12 feet.
12 feet, so it's being reduced by 1 foot?
Just 1 foot. And that will be made up against the inside curb. There's currently an edge stripe, and so that's not necessary on a residential street or a street of this nature, so.
Why was the northbound lanes, only the northbound chosen?
That was in discussion as part of our scoping for the MAPS 4, was to make accessibility on one side through this corridor. So it was just,
Cost effective.
honestly, it's less intrusive as well. I mean, it does make the connection. We're tying to a full sidewalk system along 36th Street, as well as the 23rd and Classen Boulevard PPA to the south. And so this will tie that to 36th Street there at Chartel.
So then that won't actually affect the school then, if it's only northbound?
Well, but.
It will.
But there's no consideration for any sidewalk south of 38th, correct?
Yes, there's currently sidewalk there at Crown Heights Park, and part of our project will actually add a handicap ramp that is not there currently, and so we will be tying to that sidewalk, and that sidewalk continues south to 36th Street.
Okay, then let me ask this. Is there any consideration for sidewalks south of Crown Heights Park, where there is currently street parking all the way through there?
There is sidewalk for the west side of the road. Currently, there is a, and I don't want to use, I guess the proper term is a mid-block crossing, because there's sidewalk in the park, both on the east side and the west side, and they cross that. And yes, there will be consideration for, through that parking that you're talking about, to the strip center there where Urban Barbecue is, and so.
So the way that I saw it, it goes on the west side of Chartel to 37th, to approximately 37th Street, and then it crosses over Chartel, both sides of Chartel, and then continues on the east side of Chartel along Crown Heights Park for the remainder, correct?
Exactly correct, yes, sir.
Why wouldn't it all just go on the south side? That way you don't have that crossover, which can be dangerous at an uncontrolled intersection.
And there is consideration to put sidewalk on that east side, but you're still, when you get to the intersection, you can use the crosswalk at that instance. And that may be what your safety concern is rather do that at a lighted intersection.
Okay, so are there going to be sidewalks on both sides or just on one side?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, there is a side, the proposal is for sidewalk on the east side from 38th, as it's written, from 38th to 43rd Street. If your question was, is there going to be a sidewalk on the east side that's not currently there from 37th to 36th, is that what your question is?
So right now,
I just want to understand, I apologize.
well, I guess I misunderstood the drawing. It looked to me like it was showing sidewalk from 36th, partial way up, and then crossing across Chartel, and then going on 38th.
Katie, do you have that map? Can you share that?
I don't know why I thought I saw it.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
Okay, so this is connecting the existing sidewalk on the park, and I apologize, that's an old aerial. It doesn't even show the sidewalk in Crown Heights Park, but there is sidewalk currently on both sides of Chartel here, and so it's basically just connectivity. If your question is about sidewalks on the east side of Chartel from 36 to that mid-block crosswalk, is that?
No, my question is from 36 to Crown Heights Park on the west side. Where is there going to be sidewalk there?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, sir. Per this preliminary engineering report drawing is, yes, there'll be sidewalk on the west side from 36 to the crosswalk.
And that is part of Crown Heights also, correct?
And Katie, I believe that you had asked that question about that and had determined that that property was not.
There's a piece over here that is not within the district. I think there is a small stretch of sidewalk that is in the district.
Need to be
The sidewalk on the west side from 36 to Crown Heights Park is already existing.
And can you state name and address for
My
record,
name is
too?
Molly McBride, and my address is 829 Northwest 39th Street. So the west side from 36 through 38, there is an existing sidewalk that is then connected to the sidewalks on the east side park through the existing crosswalk.
So the picture that we've got is just not showing the connection from basically to
There is
the...
no sidewalk from 36 Terrace
The connected.
to Crown Heights Park.
So I guess technically that's a pedestrian walkway.
No, the cars park on the street from 36 Terrace to Crown Heights Park in front of all those duplexes. There is no way to walk in that area. What's being done to address that area, if we're concerned about connectivity and walkability, what's being done to address the area from 36 Terrace to Crown Heights Park?
And Commissioner, I with everything said, yes, that the line that was shown on the west side is a proposed sidewalk to connect 36th Street to that mid-block crosswalk.
On the
west side of Chartel.
Okay, then my question is, then why isn't the entire sidewalk continuing on the west side of Chartel? Why is there, why?
East side.
No, my
My
question
understand-
is why are we moving the sidewalk from the west side over to the east side with a crossover on Chartel? Why isn't the entire sidewalk going along the west side? Why are we having it cross over Chartel in this proposal?
That is an existing crosswalk. Okay, the crossover from the west side to the east side is an existing in order to connect the two park sidewalks together. And so we were tying to that existing structure and utilizing that existing crosswalk.
If I had
It's
to
already
guess, I would not
signed and striped. And then we were gonna go on the east side for connectivity for the park, the school, and as it connects those amenities.
But wouldn't it be, if we're talking about safety here, wouldn't it be safer to not have the crossover, to have a continuous sidewalk through the entire area on one side of Chartel?
I can see that question and that point. You would cross over to get to the more amenities if you go to the north, because the school is on the east side. As you get up there, you would tie to
The school is not in Crown Heights.
If
The
I-
school, the Crown Heights ends at 42nd Street. So the school is not a concern here. But what we're talking about is a certificate of appropriateness for the sidewalk from 38th to 42nd Street, correct?
Yes, sir.
The school is past 42nd Street. So to me, we don't have any concern about the school here.
I disagree with that because, I mean, people access that school that live within this community. So, I mean, the school is an important element of connectivity between everything in between.
And they've got it running all the way to the school's parking lot too. So I think it would bring them in. I would see it bringing them in a little bit. My guess is if I had to just guess, the reason why they put it on this side of the street is because they wanted to tie into Crown Heights Park.
Crown Heights Park is on both sides of the street.
Well, the bigger side of
So
Crown
let me
Heights.
clarify, because I think the logic here is there is not a sidewalk currently between 37th and 38th on the west side of Chartel.
Correct.
It ends, it crosses over, so their extension is of the furthest northern sidewalk, which is starting at 38th. That sidewalk ends at the north, or the southwest corner of 38th is where that existing sidewalk ends. So they're picking up from that point, which is on the east side of Chartel, and continuing that north. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. We are using existing.
I understand
Structure.
exactly what's going on. I live there. I've walked the neighborhood for 25 years. I know every inch of it.
Okay. It just seemed like there were some gaps, but just, I think we're all on the same page now. We agree.
Commissioner, there was several factors that we tried to look at on that. Number one was the location of the sidewalk, which we feel like this option best gives us that ability to place a sidewalk through there. But also, as we looked at cost, your elevation of your lots throughout that is considerably greater in areas on the west side. And so when we when we looked at that, evaluated originally, the east side was more, I don't want to say available, but it received the sidewalk a lot better because of those elevation changes. And so besides the fact of connectivity with the park to the school, the elevation changes, and utilizing the existing structure of the crosswalk there on Chartel, as well as the sidewalk and the larger part of the park, those were all things that as we looked at, we made that recommendation.
All right. Was it considered also that runners most often do not utilize a sidewalk? So essentially you're putting runners further into the streetway and the oncoming traffic than the existing condition as it sets now?
And I'm just going to say that the runners would be running through a bike lane, and you're saying that there's a difference now in the bike lane and a bike lane that would be there previously?
No, there's actually room for a bike to move over into the marked off area. Here, if a bike and a runner approach at the same time, the biker or the runner is going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to go into the traffic way, whereas it sets now, they don't have to make that decision.
A runner can move onto the sidewalk in that case. they wouldn't have to move into the roadway. Like, that's the only place for a bike. So it would seem that in that instance, a runner would move into the sidewalk. Also, they don't have to use the roadway. There will be sidewalks there that they can use. So it's not
I'm
like
just
that's the
saying,
only
I've
option.
driven it, I drive Walker every morning. There's sidewalks down both sides of Walker through Heritage Hills. Runners never use the sidewalks. They're in the roadway. I mean, it's just a fact here. My concern is that the elevated sidewalk as proposed on one side of the street creates more of a safety hazard for runners, bikers, and walkers and children, because it needs to be on both sides so that we're not having a congestion on the sidewalk. There's a lot of public support came from people talking about walking in groups. This sidewalk that's being proposed doesn't support group walking. And especially if it's a two-way going on one side, if we expect all of the pedestrians to use one side to do their walking now on a sidewalk rather than doing one on both sides of the street, it just doesn't seem like a plausible resolution. Number two is if you look at the historic nature of the neighborhood, sidewalks do not exist in Crown Heights. They are non-existent. And so I don't know why we think we should destroy the historic nature of the neighborhood by installing a sidewalk when there are alternatives that have been proposed that don't require the installation of a sidewalk. It's a neighborhood without sidewalks. It should remain that way, in my view, from a historic nature.
I mean, I've got a little bit of a differing opinion. I think that the sidewalks are not being built just for the neighborhood residents. I think that the sidewalks are being built to connect communities and connect to different areas and corridors of town. And so I see that as a real benefit. And quite frankly, from the safety perspective, if I was walking down that street, I would walk on the sidewalk. I wouldn't walk in the middle of the street. So I think that there's probably differing opinions on kind of what that sidewalk represents and what it's for and who's intended to use it.
I agree. If I'm a parent walking my kid to school, I would rather have a raised sidewalk off of the roadway personally than walk in a bike lane on the road where I'm only a couple of feet from a car.
And runners don't use sidewalks because they're not very level. This would be a new sidewalk. I would run on this one. I don't run in Heritage Hills on the sidewalk because they're uneven.
Well, but I would say that having walked that area every night with my kids to the park from 40th Street, my kids were often on a bike. They were in the bike lane. I want room to be able to utilize myself on the same level as my children are. And it just doesn't make sense to me. This absolutely does not make sense to me when there are alternatives, other alternatives, and I think it's going to be an eyesore to have a sidewalk down one side of Chartel and not down the other side of Chartel. I mean, it's going to throw off that entire nice view there of symmetry and all of that. Why aren't we doing sidewalks on both sides?
Katie, is our charge here to approve this for recommendation to MAPS, or what is our
No, this is a certificate of appropriateness to install a sidewalk. To clarify, we typically don't review work that is that is curb to curb. So like just putting in the bike lane, painting that on the street, that didn't require a CA. But the guidelines specifically require commission review if we are moving the curbs themselves. So if we are widening or narrowing a street, that requires a certificate of appropriateness and it requires commission review.
So the project on Walker in Paseo,
So
is that?
yes, so that part of that is in Urban Design Commission and part of that is HP and will come to you all.
It will, okay.
It did, I think. Didn't they come and do a presentation?
They've done a
They did a
presentation and we're still working toward all the documentation for
But we haven't had a
approval.
CA yet.
Right.
Okay.
Guys,
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve this so we can move forward.
Let's go ahead and see if there's any citizens. I'm positive that some people want to speak about this one.
May
The
I
first
ask-
time I've ever gotten that one right.
May I ask two technical questions?
Me too. Go.
and I'm sure it's in the packet, is the proposal to demolish the existing curb so that it'll look like it's a sidewalk starting, or is it scabbing onto the existing curb?
Can we show the typical section again of the
And I
roadway?
see it, I just.
Okay, yeah, you can see a dashed line that's underneath the sidewalk that it depicts the existing curb line. So that will be removed, and the new curb line will be moved out to the face of the sidewalk.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that
Okay.
will be
So
taken
then,
out.
and my question is more of an aesthetic when you're on top of the sidewalk, not seeing that old curb. The second question is, I presume, is the stormwater management system from the city being relocated out to the new proposed curb line?
And that is a very good question, because we did have to analyze that. There's actually 2 inlets as part of that storm sewer system, and they will be adjusted accordingly to that width of that sidewalk.
So you're not gonna have metal grate or culverts, it'll be pulled out in line with the curb?
It will be moved out in line with the curb. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you.
My question real quick is, what are the standard requirements for the color of the concrete? Because if it looks like what we looked at earlier, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, so I don't recall the extent to which we've talked about concrete color. We have seen some city projects go in before where they've used a dye or a tint in the concrete, and they've been desert sand or rosemary, and they turn out green, they turn out orange, they turn out pink, they turn out purple. Staff has really moved toward not recommending any sort of tint or dye be added to the concrete. When someone's just doing paving at a house, there are some surface treatments that can be applied to kind of artificially age the concrete. On a project of this scale, I don't know that we would expect them to do that. We've kind of seen that the most effective way to get aged concrete is to let it age. Give it time, give it weather and use, and it will eventually blend with the surrounding concrete.
Okay, so I would imagine we've got a lot of interest. If you want to talk about this, please line up on that side of the wall, and we'll just do it one at a time. Ma'am, you're up. And name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Amber England, Northwest, 504 Northwest 42nd Street. I'm here today to ask for approval of this recommendation. I want to commend the neighborhood of Crown Heights for actually voting on this. We took a neighborhood vote, and there was a 3-to-1 margin, wanted sidewalks versus not sidewalks. And so that's a big step forward for the city. This is a project that's going to connect other neighborhoods, not just for Crown Heights neighbors. So I have a 4-year-old. She will be at Westminster 5-day next year. We walked to school. This would be very much appreciated. I'm also a runner. If there is a sidewalk, I will run on the sidewalk and not in the street. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir? Name and address for the record, too, please.
Marshall Mungle, 621 Northwest 42nd Street, resident of Crown Heights. Wanted to, as you all know, Historic Preservation Rule 237 says that the construction, all sidewalks are to be constructed and maintained in a continuity of the materials and character present in the district. Commissioner, as you said, there are no sidewalks in Crown Heights. Nothing about raised sidewalks in a historic Chartel district is consistent with the district and the rules that are set forth. This would be a project outside of the guidelines that we have today for our district. You know, we look at this raised sidewalks. If you remember, along Western Avenue a couple of years ago, they installed some raised medians actually there, but and Western is an area, well, they didn't last very long. And our concern too is a raised sidewalk would be, someone mentioned, well, that's a safety factor. Well, how can that be a safety factor when you're narrowing the area where the car is going to be, plus the speed and everything. We have people running the stop lights there, so that a raised sidewalk is not going to, in our opinion, is not going to correct any safety issues. So we would ask that you deny this application.
Thanks, sir.
Any questions?
Questions?
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Ma'am?
My name is Ann Kearney. I live at 815 Northwest 42nd Street in Crown Heights. I'm here also to ask that you deny this certificate of appropriateness. I wanted to call your attention especially to the final results. So this has been a very divisive issue, as you might imagine, in the neighborhood. And I know with all due respect and goodwill toward conducting a fair process, with so much emotion behind it. I just wanted to call your attention to the final numbers for the four final options, that vetted options that we were presented with as a neighborhood. So there were the elevated sidewalk was allocated by votes from the neighborhood, whoever was participating, 737 points. The paint option was allocated again by neighbors voting, 728.5 votes, or sorry, points. That's 8.5 points separating those two choices. The third choice, the third option available to us was no change. 600, that was allocated by neighbors, 692 points. So if you add the paint and the no change together, they add up to 1,420.5 points. That's almost twice as much as the points allocated to the elevated sidewalk. I'm just saying that there's hardly a clear consensus on this among the neighbors, and I feel like there should be another vote.
Sure. To me, that would make sense. I mean, it's hard to group no change and paint together, in my opinion, but if you did a vote with just elevated and paint.
Exactly. That's all we'd ask for. And also, there's an expense and disruption, so that basically the two less expensive and/or expensive options garnered twice as many points. So, and I included some information in your, but you can verify the numbers with anybody. So,
thank you.
Anyway, thank you so much for the ability to speak. Appreciate it.
Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Hallie Reeves. I live at 717 Northwest 41st Street. So my property abuts the sidewalk that is being proposed. I would like to first say thank you for hearing this. And also, I want to express my gratitude as well to the neighborhood for going through this process, the MAPS team, all of the contractors who have been engaged with this. It's been long, and we have asked many, many hours of people beyond what normal projects require. So first off, I want to say I support this project. Professionally, I have a background in economic development and city planning and public health. So I have studied the safety implications of sidewalks, and I know that it's safer. I also personally, obviously, live on the corridor. I grew up on the corridor, so this is very personal as well. And just as the other speakers noted, this is tied up in a lot of emotions. So I'm not going to talk about the merits of the project, but I do want to talk about the process because I understand there has been concern about it. So I have some materials that I can hand out to you if you'd like them, but I understand that I can't. So
thank you.
I'm just going to kind of quickly go through them. In early March, our neighborhood was made aware of the project through surveyors, though I understand that this corridor has been sought for improvements around pedestrian improvements and bicycle improvements since Bike Ped OKC was adopted by the Planning Commission and City Council. So In March 20th, or on March 20th, we had an initial meeting of a small group of neighbors, and then on the 21st, it was brought to the board, and the board, the consensus at the board meeting was that we were going to go to the MAPS connectivity meeting, which is the funding mechanism for this, and learn more. So then that meeting happened, and we had a varying opinions that were voiced, as you've heard already. And so from there, we had the suggestion that we work with the engineers who were hired to develop a plan that works for our neighborhood. And so from that point on, we had 2 community meetings with all of our neighbors. We had 2 surveys, one that was open to concerns and excitements around sidewalks, which I had submitted yesterday, and I hope that you guys had access to that. And then a second survey that was opening the idea pool into other options so that we could kind of come up with some other ideas. The board, after that initial meeting, the board suggested that we put together a subcommittee on walkability. That committee then worked directly with the city's engineers to vet various options, and that's how we resulted in 4 options that were then voted upon. The board in May, for this process, developed they voted on a star voting system where every house would get 1 vote. And star voting is unique because it builds a primary and a general election into 1 vote. And so every house could allocate up to 5 points per option. So with that, it's a little confusing. We were also told, because it's a little confusing, to just explain how to conceptually do this. So what ends up happening with the outcomes, and I think this is important because it was just mentioned, we had those point allocations to determine the top 2 options. And from that, it was clear that the painted and the elevated walkway that extends the curb into the street were the top 2 options. So then, if we look at those ballots again, we're able to see the percent of the neighbors who preferred either of those 2 options. So we have then solid votes for each of them. If you look at the number of households who preferred no sidewalks versus no change, going back to strictly the number of households, we have 33% of the households who preferred no change, over 67% who preferred change. If we look at people who preferred no sidewalks, so this is including the paint versus the no change, or the paint, no, it's, what is it? It's, sorry. It's the painted sidewalk with no change, those combined, and elevated with, there was another one that was a serpentine path that had a lot of uproar about it. Like, we had signs throughout the median and all sorts of things saying, vote no because we want to save our trees, so on and so forth. Those 2 options combined were still a clear majority. So with that, we had a very strong majority that pointed us to a change, but also very, very strongly pointed to elevated sidewalks. In fact, if you look at the number of households that voted for the elevated sidewalk versus the paint on the ground, we had something like 121 households preferred the elevated sidewalk versus, I want to say it was 98 preferred the paint on the ground. So there was a clear distinction. We had something like 291 households respond to the vote. We had, it was open for 6 days, and then we had an in-person option as well. So we've had a lot of effort that has gone into this, incredible engagement. Over 50% of the neighborhood was engaged in this, and so it was very clear what the result of that was. So 2 neighborhood-wide flyers, week-long voting process, and lots of input. I will say that once we had the voting output, I personally, as a household owner on the corridor abutting this change, I created an email listserv of the homeowners who are going to be impacted by it. and made sure that they were aware of this. And so that email listserv is still active. In fact, I just printed it, and if you want it, you can have it. But there are concerns, and I think most of them have been brought up today regarding the slopes in the yard, stormwater drainage, the concern around navigation with driveways, and the roller coaster effect of the change in the walking path. There's also a concern about the Memorial Marathon. I will say that the Walkability Subcommittee did talk to the marathon directly about that. And also, what was noted previously, we also worked with the school about their carpool lane. And they are in support of whatever the neighborhood decides. So with that, thank you for your time, and thanks for listening to me wander on in my thought process. I will say that we also have a SWOT analysis if you want something more concise that the neighbors abutting the area have put together.
Perfect.
Thank
you. I appreciate all the data and statistics. That helps me kind of contextualize, conceptualize, whatever you want to call it, kind of where everybody stands. This is a really, any change in Crown Heights or Heritage Hills or any of the historic districts are always met with, positives and negatives. And I recognize that this is a divisive issue. Me personally, and certainly want to hear from the citizens here, but I could see an approval, I could also see a continuance. That's kind of where my head's at right now, but please state your name and address for the record too, and talk to us about your thoughts.
Well, I was standing in line, so I thought I would speak.
Excellent.
Sorry, I won't take up much of your time. My name is Betsy Brunstetter. I am a resident of Crown Heights, 604 Northwest 41st Street. I've lived in historic neighborhoods my entire adult life, and I have been on the HP committee or commission for about 8 years, a long time ago. So when a lot of you guys weren't even born. But anyway, I wanted to vote or give my request for approval for this because I feel like this option is the best option as far as historic appearance. Everybody has seen our bright green bicycles on there, and we'll probably still have some, but I feel like this is going to be a much more, a safer option. I too walk my grandchildren up and down Chartel to the park or to the church, and I have a little tiny child on a scooter that goes really fast, and those wheels are so close to her right now with her on the ground. So anyway, I feel like I'm sure that SRB will take care of any design issues that the neighbors have, and I would really like for you to approve this. Thank you very much.
I will also say I formerly lived on 39th Street, and oftentimes walking to the park, with kids on a bike or whatever the case may be, it always made me a little bit uncomfortable having them on the street with cars. I personally would have preferred them on a sidewalk, and often found myself wondering why there weren't more sidewalks in Crown Heights at the time too. So again, just a little personal story, but please state your name and address for the record and give us your thoughts.
Make this quick. Connie Mungle, I'm at 621 Northwest 42nd. I'd just like to say, so many people wondered why we needed this because we can always walk on the median if you feel safer, And, when we had those meetings, they said the raised sidewalk they couldn't afford it. And so I kind of wrote that off. I didn't even think that was an option. And I just wanted to say we got good options, and I'd like to say let's deny this.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. Lots of feedback, lots of communication, lots of discussion. We appreciate that very, very much. I think we're probably out of time to get a motion going. I know we've got differing opinions up here on the shoe, but who wants to go first? Or so who wants to go first?
I'll withdraw mine.
Withdraw? Okay. Commissioners?
And maybe this is a question for Katie. I hear everything that's being said, and I would love to have more sidewalks in my neighborhood. So I see the value in that. But I also have a concern with the design as proposed, kind of messing with the symmetry of the boulevard. I mean, I think that's kind of a big deal. I think there are design challenges like the driveways and all that, and the grading and the stormwater. I think all that can get. I have faith in the engineers to figure that stuff out. The symmetry in affecting the historic character is a concern for me.
You know, looking at this picture, that's a beautiful boulevard, and the way that it is symmetrical and all that, and so that is a concern for me too. The symmetry and the look of how it will affect the architectural fabric of that community too. I mean, I do see that point as well. So I guess I wonder if a continuance is in order to let I'm sure that the project owners don't want to continue to meet with the neighborhood, but I do feel like there's some things that could be addressed, rectified, discussed.
And
I
that's
guess I
my
would,
main concern as well. I mean, even that's kind of where I was going on the line of questioning is why was one side chosen over the other, or why was not both sides? I mean, I think it destroys the character of Chartel to put a sidewalk down one side. It makes absolutely no aesthetic sense to put it down one side, none whatsoever.
I will just say from the stance of MAPS 4 and the implementation of MAPS 4 and the sidewalk package that this package is already late because we have given so much time for the community to work through this. What wasn't, I think, touched on totally is the MAPS office asked the Neighborhood Association to come to the city, back to the city with a solution, working with SRB. They came up with, I thought, speaking as a professional planner, they put a lot of process, more than you would expect out of a normal neighborhood, to come to this decision. I'm not sure what a continuance achieves. I'm not sure where that leaves us in terms of going back to this neighborhood. At some point, I do think we would need to eventually make a decision about how we can even implement the rest of this package. There are other neighborhoods waiting for their sidewalks.
Sure, yeah.
I would
Makes sense.
guess that it's limitation of funding right now
Would think
to
so.
why it's on one side. I think it's very important to provide connectivity. I understand the significance of the historic neighborhood, but this is something that is of equal opportunity to everybody that is in ADA accessibility. Somebody in a wheelchair, they can't go down the middle of a median.
Sure.
So this outweighs the importance to me of of the historic character, and hopefully at some point maybe it can come back and there'll be so I'm in support. It sounds like they've done a lot of due diligence and a lot of community outreach, and
Would you like to put forward a motion?
I will do that.
Okay.
I will, let's see, make a recommendation of, what, is it actually just a recommendation?
It's a
or is it
motion.
A motion
Yep.
of approval, okay. For HPCA 2300089.
I'll second.
Before we vote, there was a recommended condition that additional details regarding the driveways, interaction with the driveways and sidewalks be clarified with staff. If you all are amenable to that and if the commission supports that.
I would like to see that.
Yes, with that condition.
Is there any way for us to, I don't know if the neighborhood association submitted like their data? I mean, I would like to, if we're not doing a continuance, it's fine, but I mean, it would have been nice if we could have seen sort of the statistics of that.
Some of that was in.
You mean the votes?
Yeah.
Can you state your name and address?
I mean,
for the
I
record
have a
again?
spreadsheet of the votes. There's a lot of cleaning that had to occur to them, like we had at least 8 people that voted that didn't live in the neighborhood. There were some duplicates by address. But in terms of providing the spreadsheet with the votes, I don't know if that slows us down and we don't want a continuance anyway, but that is something that transparently I'd be happy to make available.
So name and address for the record, and also some of that data was in the notes from the neighborhood's comments, or some of the comments from some of the neighborhood folks.
Yeah, I've seen it kind of here and there.
Okay. It wasn't clear that
The other thing, Cassie,
going to be down one side and not two.
Can you also note specific bindings in that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, perfect. Let's all take a vote. Moved by Commissioner Poore, second by Commissioner Milner. Were there any specific?
As listed in the staff report.
Okay, there we go.
Commissioner Whitley, your vote, please.
Oh, yes, sorry, screen's not working.
Okay, that passed with a vote of 6 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstain. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 6, HPCA 23-00091 at 930 Northwest 22nd Street.
This is Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Magnus Jollybird for Taylor Neighbors for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, remove hung windows and replace with stick-built plate glass windows required. 2, remove and replace hung windows required. 3, close window openings required. And 4, remove and replace door with stick-built plate glass window required. So as you might infer from the fact that these all say required, this is work that has already been either initiated or completed. We will review this as if it had not yet occurred. The staff report recommends continuance on the entire case. We have concerns that we don't have good documentation of the condition that the windows were in prior to removal. That may be difficult to acquire now since the work has already been completed, but there may be remaining historic windows that are currently boarded that could be documented, and that has not been provided. And then some, if not all of the windows may or may not meet applicable guidelines as far as the style of the windows, fitting the historic window openings, replicating the historic windows, etc.
Perfect. Thank you. Just as a note, Commissioner McBride is back up here. And Fallon, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Fallon Brooks Magnus, 733 Northwest 22nd Street, representing the applicant.
Excellent. I will tell you, I looked at this one. The size I think was of concern too. I don't think that the size of the windows was off by that much. I was inclined to approve, but please comment on the style of the windows, the condition of them as they were before, and is there any documentation there, and walk us through your notes.
So I'm unaware of what the condition was prior to my client owning the property. I did, and you may remember, this is actually why we're here, is because this affects the garage application that we had previously brought before you guys. So that has a stop work order on it, and I want to find a path forward for them. Most of these windows, actually all of the windows have been removed. There's not a single original window in the house except that stairwell window right there, the round one. It's the only one that's remaining that's original. And then these ones that you see, like the upper one up there that has a storm window on it. So the window inside there is gone. It's just a storm window. They have covered it over with a wall. I'm not going to speculate as to who they may be. I don't know if it was my client or the previous owner. I'm just working with the information I have. I think that I'll cut to the chase and tell you, I think the best path forward, in my opinion, is probably for the entire second floor, where we've replaced windows with windows that are pretty much in kind. They are just wood frame, JELD-WIN windows. I think that we can probably reasonably say that those are acceptable. The site-built first floor windows, probably, I would say we just replace those with the same thing that we've placed on the second floor. It's just a wood JELD-WIN window, 1/1. There's no muntins. It looks just like what was there before. I think it's the closest approximation that we're going to get to the historic condition. There are a few windows also that were covered, and then some that were covered from the inside but not the outside. You can see those. So like these two that are down here, so this is on the east side of the house facing another house. So you've got, 10 feet in between houses. So those two openings that were covered over, we'd like those to remain closed if possible. And then on the rear of the house, so these are all the first floor. This is the west side. So those are what we're asking to put everywhere, essentially. They're 1/1, wood frame, JELD-WIN, pretty acceptable. I suggested to my client that they put them on the first floor as well in lieu of the site-built ones that they had put in place. So they're pretty bad.
Okay.
And then this is the south side of the property facing an alley. And so you can see on the left side there, they've closed up those two windows. The one in the middle, we would want to ask to leave it closed over. The one on the far right has been replaced, you can see. On the one on the left, I advised my client that because of the location on the corner of the house and facing, I mean, you can see it from the street, you can see all of them from the street, but I just think that given that location, it probably makes the most sense to bring that one back to operational. And then where they've removed a door on the rear, there's some pictures from when before the house was relocated from the 90s. And there's two doors on the rear. I don't know if the house was a duplex or what. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to have two doors there. They go into the same space. And so that's, I actually didn't know there was a door here until staff brought it to my attention. I didn't realize, I thought they had just replaced a window. So that is a kitchen window. And so we would also ask that that be replaced with, you know, like what we have specified instead of what was built on site. So.
Is it possible to turn that smaller window into another window again, or what's on the other side of that wall?
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible, of course. Are they amenable to that? It's weird to me to have a window that's...
I think that, so they are amenable to the one on the far left, because, and here's my thought on this. So the one in the middle is smaller, it's not centered. It does not provide any, like the other two, if we just had those two, they would be symmetrical. If we eliminate the one in the middle, as it has been done, and put siding over it, I think it's gonna look better. That's just my personal opinion. But they are amenable to returning operation to the left side. Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think the only thing that you haven't touched on is documentation of the previous windows. Is there anything out there to...
Nothing. The only documentation, I mean, I actually didn't even, I don't know how staff got a photo of the house before it was moved. I couldn't find that information. So that is literally, that's the only documentation we have prior to me getting my hands on it, so.
I don't think that I'm necessarily opposed to the changes that the applicant's suggesting. I think there's certain things that need to be brought to staff's, the documentation of the windows downstairs and all that, submitted to staff and all of that, but I'm not even opposed to closing up the window in the middle. Would love to hear your all's thoughts though, too.
I would just say that my hope for today would be, because this is holding up an active building permit, I would like to find a path forward that allows them to get their building permit back into play so that they can move along with their garage. I think that most of this is a pretty straightforward resolution with commission today. There are a couple things that are probably staff is going to have their hands on, but I don't see any way that we can't resolve this by, leaving it up to staff at this point. Mostly, I don't want to wait another 30 days.
I have some questions about the windows. So this is kind of for staff first. I'll ask you first. Was a reason that all these Geldwin windows used rather than doing custom is cost and stock? Is that
So actually, quite a few of them were in the house when it was purchased. And I think that the current owner, and this is just my speculation, I think that they just assumed that that had been approved.
Okay.
So that's where those windows on the second floor that have been put in came from. They were in the house. And then they ordered several. They actually found the same window and ordered it for the garage that's being built. So they can still get those.
And then specifically as to, there's a window here that says it was a site-built wood frame window.
Yeah.
I mean, why did they build it so much smaller than the opening on that? I mean, I have a real problem with that window.
I have a real problem with that window, and I will tell you, when I got called out to the site, I went, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is, no." So I don't know what they were hoping to achieve. That is some fine craftsmanship.
Just as I go around, part of my pet peeves on houses is when they buy the stock windows and add all, it just goes all over me. In our house, we actually, when we moved in, we pulled out 4 windows that were done like that, spent 10 grand on 4 windows and had custom built divided light wood pane windows put in that were supposed to go there.
I would venture to guess that most of that, and some of it is off by an inch.
Right,
Some of it is off by 2 or 3, usually in the height. And that probably has to do with the size of glass that was available.
Sure.
If they didn't have to cut it, it was probably cheaper. That's just my thoughts.
And I think that was the only window I saw that was a significant. The first floor, yeah, the site-built windows are the ones that I really have a problem with.
And I knew we would.
So I'm not opposed to the other windows, but the site-built windows with significant gapping around them, I'm opposed to those.
And that was the anticipation. That's why we went ahead and specified that we'd put the same windows in
Yeah.
on the second floor. Yeah.
And we already approved the windows on the garage.
Yeah, the garage is completely
Yeah, because
approved.
that was already,
Yeah.
you got the CA for that. Yeah, so if we already approved those windows, then it makes sense to.
So the garage is new construction, just.
Right, it's new construction, but I assumed that, because I think that was before I started on commission, but I would assume that, you know, part of that argument was these match what's at the house.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, it makes sense to, you know, move forward with those JELD-WIN windows, you know, maybe make an exception for the smaller one that needs to be replaced, but.
Okay, do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Negative. Do we have a motion?
So let me just say
sorry.
that because the staff recommendation was a continuance, if we do approve, I think what would be helpful for staff and what we would want to have to include in the CA are not just the standard JELD-WIN cut sheet, but a specific drawing for each window type, showing the window, the size, the configuration, and also showing the trim around the window casing, because that's a big part of you know, what we're seeing right now is a window kind of shimmied into a rough opening, and making sure that that woodwork around the window is going to match whatever remains on the house.
If we make that a condition, can that be
Yes, that can be
administratively
a
approved?
submit to staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really the only, I just want to make sure it's staff review and not commission.
What is that supposed to mean?
That would just be.
I'm tired of looking at you guys. No, I just don't think it's. I just don't think that it's not. Something
We like
that staff
seeing
should
you.
do.
You'll be here next
Oh,
month.
well, I
anyway.
appreciate that because most of the time I think you guys hate me.
No.
Just to clarify, that technically wouldn't be an administrative approval, it would just be a condition that it be submitted to staff
Okay.
to include in the CA.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion to approve HPCA-23-00091 with conditions that the applicant submits required material to staff.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Whitley, second by Commissioner Gaines. Please vote in PrimeGov. Excellent. That passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, move on to HPCA 23-00092 at 100 Northwest 20th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Preston Merritt, Hailstore Roofing and Construction, for John Dow for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace roof elective, 2, install roof ventilation to match roof elective, 3, paint metal to match roof, including pipe vents, flashing, drip edge required, 4, remove and roof over chimneys elective, 5, paint brick wall elective, and 6, paint chimney brick elective. So staff recommended approval with conditions of the roof components, with the condition that the chimneys not be removed, and recommended, I don't remember now that I'm saying this, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, recommended continuance or denial on removal of chimneys and painting the brick. This is a house that has been previously altered. As you can see, there's some features that are clearly not typical of the era of when the house was originally built. But we still generally don't support painting unpainted brick because aside from the aesthetics and the historic character, it has a physically damaging impact to masonry. And then staff never supports removing a historic chimney unless it just has to come down for structural reasons.
Perfect, thank you, Katie. Just one minor point of clarification. Staff did recommend continuance on removing the chimneys and painting the brick, but I would be in support of a denial on removing the chimneys and painting the brick. So, having said that, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Preston Merritt. I'm here on behalf of Johnny Dow for 100 Northwest 20th Street. We're doing just a regular residential re-roof here for an insurance claim with hail. And while we were up there, we noticed that the neighbor house to the adjacent to the west had their chimneys removed above their roof line. Mr. Dow is active in the military and does serve time overseas for years. He's been there for 3 years and has been home for a couple months. We've been discussing how to further waterproof his roof so that he doesn't have further maintenance issues. Both of those chimneys are leaking very badly. We do have interior damage that we're going to have to remediate, and we're waiting until we get the roof closed in before we do so. As far as the painting goes, he would just like to do a make-ready, a refresh. He will be having renters at some point when he goes back and serves overseas.
Sure.
So most of it's pretty standard, but the bricks, they are coming apart. They're not sealed properly, they're not repointed. Both chimneys are missing the chimney caps. Just really an older house that we've noticed have had some improvements that we're just trying to make completely sealed off by removing above the roof line and putting solid decking as well as new shingles.
So one option I've seen before is just not have them be functioning chimneys. Has that been of consideration with, basically a faux chimney on top? I think you're going to be hard pressed to get the chimneys removed from this house. Just my own personal opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Does that go for the main one on the northwest corner and the rear one as well?
Yes.
Okay, so they're currently already not functional. Inside, there's already drywall.
Yep.
So we've just noticed that behind the drywall, there's leaking.
Sure.
And there's also mold growing in one of the rooms we're gonna have to remediate. So that was one of the main concerns for him long-term, that he wouldn't have to have those long-term maintenance issues, again, because he's serving. But again, we understand.
Yeah.
That's what we talked about with Angela too, was keeping the main one on the front, because it's visible from the front street, but also having the ability to remove the back one.
Sure.
Additional, basically we're gonna have to reflash and counterflash both the chimneys, and that's hundreds of dollars per chimney, plus the repointing. So he's looking at a couple $1,000s in expenses that are not gonna be covered on his insurance claim, because it's really just replacing what's there. So we're just asking for permission from the commission.
Well, it is expensive to own historic homes.
Yes.
The maintenance is not fun. I would not support removing the chimneys. I don't know, there's probably not much that you could tell me that would say, oh yeah, take them off.
Right.
Same thing with painting the brick. There's ways to address the brick that's there. I know it's more cost effective. I feel bad because the guy serves our country, which I'm very, very grateful for. But at the same time, our mission here is to protect the integrity of this particular structure. And in doing so, I don't believe that we can allow the chimneys to be removed or the bricks to be painted. Everything else looks pretty straight on to me.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
So when it comes to reflashing the brick chimneys, right now we have a cut-in flashing, and really it needs to be removed and then reflashed and then use counter flashing over that, and then the bricks repointed. And since the chimneys are not functional, would it be okay to just brick in the chimneys as they are? Like basically make it to where it's just not functional, not changing any appearance. We would not request adding chimney caps in. We're trying to make it to where it's fully sealed.
If it's not visible from the street and it doesn't change the appearance of what you see kind of in this picture,
Okay.
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay. And as far as painting the brick, that was just an aesthetic request, and if that's not going to pass, we understand.
Okay.
What about painting the siding? Does that change?
I think they can paint the siding whatever
So
color they want
we
to.
don't review paint on painted surfaces at all. So
Okay.
they can paint siding and trim and that sort of thing.
Okay. And is there any specific request from the commission for the flashing? Would be able to change the flashing on that to just a more waterproofed flashing?
I don't know that I would know one way or the other.
Katie, do you guys need to see that?
I think, as far as I know, all our guidelines just talk about it having a coated finish to it, that it's not the raw metal appearance.
Okay.
So we don't particularly have concerns about the material or type of flashing, but just if you can confirm and verify with staff what you're going to use. We'll make sure we're all good on that.
So any flashing that's going to be metallic or metal will be painted weathered wood color to match all the other metal flashings on the home. The drip edge, the vents, all that will be painted weathered wood. So you won't really notice anything other than just it's not going to look like that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, the bricks are so loose you can move them with your hands.
Yeah.
So we just want to make sure that we follow the rules.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate that. Any citizens that wish to speak on this particular project? Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Do we have a motion?
Can I move approval?
Yeah.
Of HPCA -23-0092, items 1, 2, and 3, with specific findings and condition as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Milner, second by Commissioner Poore. Please vote in prime vote. Motion passes unanimously. We'll go on to item number 4 and 5 and 6. We have a motion on 4, 5, and 6. And I would see that as a denial with prejudice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, do you want me to, what are we doing? I move to deny HPCA-23-0092, items 4, 5, and 6 with prejudice.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Milner, second by Commissioner Poore. Please vote in prime gov. Okay, that passes unanimously as well. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, other business. The first one we have is BOA 15423 at 2903 North Robinson. Is the applicant present? Sorry.
No, go ahead. This is in Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Blake Billings to provide a recommendation to Board of Adjustment regarding an application for a special exception to allow home sharing. I believe you did get a comment from one public comment regarding this that we will forward on to Board of Adjustment. It's really more for their consideration, but it talked about allowing the special exception limited to a year so that they could assess the impact of the home share and having requirements addressing parking. This is one that is in a historic landmark overlay district, so the requirements about the homeowner having to be on site at the time of rental don't apply in this district. Beyond that, this application appeared to meet all applicable guidelines and requirements, and we have provided a recommendation to recommend approval to Board of Adjustment.
Thank you, Katie. I've looked at it. I would recommend approval as well. Would you like to, anything you care to say, and if so, name and address for the record?
Blake Billings, 2903 North Robinson Avenue, and if you guys approve it, then I don't have anything to say.
Perfect. Any citizens that wish to be heard? Just checking that out real quick. Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
I'll make a motion to recommend HPCA 23, oh no, that's wrong, BOA 15423 to the Board of Adjustment.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Poore, second by Commissioner Milner. Please vote in prime gov. Motion passes unanimously. That was our fastest one ever. Okay, move on to item letter B, SPUD 01546 at 2801 North Hudson. Is the applicant present?
Patiently waiting. This is Jefferson Park, also Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Klaus Ryman Philip Architecture for Fishkop LLC to provide a recommendation to Planning Commission regarding a request to rezone to a simplified planned unit development in accordance with regulations of the R2 Residential District, Historic Landmark, and Jefferson Park Urban Conservation Zoning District, except with the restrictions and uses as called out within the proposed SPUD. This is a property that has an existing duplex, and the applicant is proposing to rezone in order to allow for the construction of a second duplex at the west end of this property. So it would be changing things like minimum lot size, lot width, lot coverage, and also to not require any parking as part of the SPUD. They have indicated on the site plan locations where there would be some parking, but that it would not be required as part of the zoning. On a typical block, in a typical neighborhood, staff might say adding another duplex to a lot that already has a duplex is a lot. In this particular area, 2 other corner properties adjacent to this one have the same configuration. They have 2 duplexes. One has, I think, a garage apartment as well. So as far as being in keeping with the historic character, historic development pattern of the immediate area, the proposal seems to be consistent with that. The 2 kind of considerations that staff raised, lot coverage is higher than what we typically look for when we're reviewing cases. It's particularly for what would be parcel 2, the west end of the lot. And then the other concern is that, not really concern, but just a point to be considered by the commission is that if, as this moves through the process to Planning Commission and City Council, if they were to require that some parking be included, that is going to further impact lot coverage. We would want to ensure that the SPUD includes requirements that it meets guidelines and regulations for HP as far as placement, screening, et cetera, for the parking. But any new construction, any other changes to the site would come back through Historic Preservation Commission for a certificate of appropriateness. So any further work on the property is going to have additional review, and this is just a recommendation regarding the rezoning itself.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, good afternoon, Klaus Raymond Phillip, 2801 North Hudson Avenue. And yeah, I think Katie summed it up pretty well. Basically, it's a normal lot depth, but kind of this big open back area. And the intention is to build another duplex on the backside facing 27th Street. And what's unique about this corner is it's essentially the same condition, like Katie mentioned, on all 4 corners. Actually, there's an aplex directly to the south of the property, so I think it's pretty consistent with the character of the neighborhood. And I've worked with staff a little bit to, you know, kind of craft the SPUD to kind of fit the intentions, you know, of the development. Yeah, and I think as far as the conditions are concerned, I don't have any issues with the condition. As far as lot coverage, I think, you know, as far as the other properties on the corner that kind of share the same configuration, I think it's actually going to be less lot coverage. One of the conditions or one of the line items in the SPUD was not to have off-street parking. I think I'll plan to have some off-street parking, but I don't really want to be required, because if we had to have parking for all 4 units, all of a sudden the whole site would be paved, and in my opinion, that would be detrimental to the character of the property in the neighborhood. So that's really, you know, lot coverage I think is actually less than some of the other surrounding properties, because the aplex to the south is 100% covered pretty much. And then I printed off one aerial. I should have included it in the packet, but on the other corners, it's pretty much all paved and building. So I wanted to maintain a little bit of open space for tenants.
You know, I think it is unique. There seems like there's a lot of density at this particular intersection, and while it's a lot of lot coverage, I don't know that it's, you know, out of the norm for this particular area. I don't particularly see any major issues with the application unless...
Yeah, I don't have any issues with the lot coverage being on, with that street frontage in the corner lot, as long as that additional impervious isn't running onto the neighbors, which I presume is running towards the street, and the city's okay with the stormwater management side of it. I don't see that it has a historic relevance.
Okay.
And of course, any design, actual design would have to come back anyway.
Sure.
For review, yeah.
Did I already ask if any citizens wish to be heard? Any citizens wish to be heard on this project? Okay. Well, do we have a motion?
Move approval for recommendation for SPUD 01546.
So there are findings, and then there were a number of conditions recommended, if you want to specify whether,
Including those.
so one of them is that building and lot coverage be modified, but it sounds like everyone's comfortable with that. So do we want to strike that condition?
Yeah, and sorry, I forgot to comment on condition number 1, and I'm fine with changing the MDS, yeah.
Okay, so with the conditions noted in the staff report.
But striking condition 4?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
the lot
Thank you.
coverage.
I'll
Also-
second. Oh.
Yeah. Ladies first.
Moved by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Whitley. Please vote in PrimeGov. Passed unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's see, we're moving on to item number 8, communication and reports. We had 10 administrative approvals, or do any of those need to be pulled? Anything we
So
need to do with that?
there is no action to be taken on those. Those have been approved by staff. They're just reported out here for your reference. Feel free anytime to contact staff if you have questions about any of those. And then no withdrawals, no administrative closings, and nothing from Council, Board of Adjustment, or Planning Commission to report.
Anything from Municipal Counselor's Office? Negative. Excellent. All right, our next meeting date, next regularly scheduled meeting for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, September 6th at 2 p.m. at the Municipal Building, City Council Chambers. New applications for this meeting were received August 1st. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. on Tuesday, August 8th. Our next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, September 13th from 11:30 to 1:30 at 420 West Main Street in Suite 900. Do we have any items from commissioners that wish to speak today?
Yes. So I was
Yes.
gonna, I sat in on the Bike Walk OKC draft update last week, which was one of my questions about the concrete and the color of concrete in historic neighborhoods, which is ironic because today we had 2 of those. So I should not be concerned about them implementing any sort of dye or color to make it look, I think the best practice now you're saying is just to let it age itself.
I really think in the long run, that is the best, you get the best result. We've seen so many that,
Look terrible.
like I said, that it's rosemary, or they're all herbs. And they just, it looks very strange. And it doesn't age the way normal concrete ages. So I think put it in, give it some time, let it get dirty, and that's the way to go.
Works for me. Thank you.
Great question, Commissioner Poore. Do we have any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay.
Should we introduce our new member?
Say that again?
Oh, yes. Gosh, I'm sorry. That should have been under items from Historic Preservation Officer. We have a new member, by the way, sitting over here. Molly McBride was appointed 2 weeks or so ago by the mayor and city council. So she is filling Joe Meacham's spot since Joe resigned. And I'm happy to have a full deck and to have her on board. So
Excellent. Welcome. We're glad you're here. I was actually going to say welcome too. I just want to note that for the record. Okay. Any citizens wish to be heard? Would you guys like to speak? Come on up to the podium. And name and address for the
My
record.
name is
please.
Mumtaz Khan, for 3020 North Walker. So, no, sorry, my house is 17109 Wild Green Avenue, Edmond, Oklahoma. So, we are in an agenda, so I was thinking it's gonna be hearing 436 Northwest 30th Street.
Mr. Khan, you all were on the consent docket, and so you were approved at the beginning of the meeting.
Approved?
Yep.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm so sorry.
All right.
Yep, you were on those couple of consent docket items. You were part of that very first approval. I don't know, maybe you came in right after that had already occurred. But you are approved. You will get a certificate of appropriateness in 10 business days and be all good to go.
Thank you so much.
Right,
We're glad
thank
you stuck around for the meeting.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.